everyone, welcome to my channel, Books, Curse, and Purrs. My name's Leslie. Tonight we're having Margaret Pinard. I'm so excited. She's a historical fiction, speculative fiction, and fantasy writer. I'm delighted to not only discuss her family saga, the Remnants Trilogy, her short story collection, Fabled Passages, and her contributions to the Stygian Collection, but also her new release, Orla, Rafferty Seeks Her Fortune. And give me one moment to, let's see if I can do this.
Yay!
Here we are. I almost got it. I have so many of these. There we go.
Layout. Yes. That looks very nice. Hello.
It's tricky. Thank you, Margaret, for being here. This is so exciting.
Thank you for having me. I love your top. It's so very professional looking, which is not any environment I'm in these days.
Only for you, okay?
Very chic. And meanwhile, I got my new flannel plaid the other day, and I'm very proud of it. It's nice and cozy because it's freezing here.
How does it feel to now have 6 books with historical elements?
Oh gosh. 6. So it's the 7th thing that I've published. So that's how I'm sort of thinking of it, doing all the work for this. And to me, they all have historical elements. So I kind of can't get away without using one. Yeah. Feels good. Feels good to get it out the door. That's what I will say.
Also, in celebration of tonight, I went ahead. I'll drink a glass for you. Some cream sherry, because your character likes sherry.
Oh my gosh!
I'll be busting this up in a second.
Okay, that's awesome.
I ran to the store and grabbed it. I asked somebody because I don't know what sherry is.
It's not a common American thing. You don't find it everywhere. Yeah.
I'm just gonna really quickly say hello to the chat before we continue. Elaine, right? Cobalt Dragon. Hi.
Hello.
Cat
hello.
Power Rosales.
Hello.
Thank you for being so patient with us. We're exclusive. Just 5 minutes.
Ooh.
This is an important night to celebrate you, so subscribe.
I'm drinking tea. I made myself some chai tea, so I will look forward to hearing of your opinion on sherry.
All right. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Stygian Collection. You are one of the contributors to the Stygian Collection, Society Collection. You wrote Space Ghost Heartbeat. What about the project spoke to you?
Oh, man. Okay, so Stygian Society is a small press in Canada run by a couple of folks, but mainly by Holly Rhiannon, I think. And she's a powerhouse. So she's an author tuber that I had come across because she just does cool things and is another indie author. And she invited some folks to apply or submit, I should say, to her first collection, inaugural collection called Stygian Collection. And since Stygian is having to do with the River Styx, and that's sort of her vibe, is like the goth, the dark side, the haunted tour kind of bit. That was sort of the theme, and I have plenty of that can go historical or not. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm envisioning something totally sci-fi and fantasy, and not my usual thing at all. So low stakes means you can take risks. So that's what I decided to do, and Holly liked it. It's in the collection along with a lot of other great pieces. And they have since, I think, put out 2 more collections, which is great. One was a single author, and one was another mixed media, or the third one may be in the works, but the second one's definitely out. So yeah, very exciting.
Yeah, I'm actually, you saying that makes me realize I'm behind because I've read that one, and I need to read the rest because I just like that each person, like some of the YouTubers that were there, the other tubers, I watched your channel. So it was exciting to see some people that maybe just wrote for the first time, or just authors I didn't know about that have, more under their belt. I thought that was really cool. I love it. It gives more of a community feel.
For sure. And she had them on the channel. Holly, I think, did interviews with most of the folks at different times. And that was neat to see like what brought them in and have all their stories. But yeah. Good deal.
Yeah. I'm gonna go say hello to chat. Yum, yum indeed. I'll take a little sip too, Margaret. Cheers.
Cheers. Chin chin. Cute glass. I've got all these cute glasses too, but I almost never use them. They just sit above the microwave.
Yeah, I mean, I bought that glass for this because I was like, I don't drink.
Oh my gosh!
A little glass, you know, because what am I gonna do? Guess what, Mary?
You're so
Mary
funny.
is reading your book right now. Orla Rafferty Seeks Her Fortune. So we're talking in a chat the other day.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Canada. Yes, I live in Canada. Yes, Elaine. Yeah, I heard you earlier in your sprint. And she's enjoying. We both are.
Good. And don't
I'm on chapter 18 right now.
Through it. Leslie was trying to rush through it. Don't feel any sort of urgency. It's fine. It's meant to be relaxed and like, you know, considered. Don't worry about it.
Let me see.
Actually, clockwise?
Huh?
Are you gonna go clockwise around the icons on the screen here, or what?
You know what? I didn't even think about that. No, actually, it might end up being like that, but like coincidence.
Okay, all right.
And selfishly, all the books that we're talking about tonight are books that I have read. Margaret has written more than this, but I haven't read them yet. So, you know, at some point, I'm gonna throw my fish hook out and reel you back in, and we'll cover the ones that I haven't read as you publish more.
There are a lot of authors' books to read out there, and yeah, maybe I'll have another one done by the time you come back around. That, fingers crossed. I'm thinking early 2026, so you have plenty of time.
Good. Yeah, I need the time. Would you mind giving just a brief overall synopsis of what people could look forward to in the Remnants Trilogy?
Yes. So I use Remnants as a sort of touchstone for cultures who are in transition. So I started out in the 1820s with a Scottish family off the coast, and they're living there. But then after the war, economics change and they can no longer stay at home. So they sort of get scattered to the wind. They go to the city. They try to survive. They try to stay together. And over the course of the series, the family ends up migrating to Canada. So I have some set in Scotland and some set in Nova Scotia, and then they become a frontier family. They deal with different cultures and prejudices there. And then in the third book, we split up and see a next generation or the younger children struggling in different ways and combating different things in their lives. But it sort of brings it full circle. So that's my trilogy.
What was the deciding factor for this trilogy and writing it as a family saga?
Oh, did I set out to write a family saga? I don't think so. I actually don't really like that term. Like, it seems old-fashioned and like it should look like Little House on the Prairie. I'm kind of like, that's not what I was going for. But after you've written something, the market sort of determines what category it fits in. So that's what I get, family saga. And what happened was I started out with a family so that I could get different viewpoints, right? The people who were responsible and in charge, the parents with their own tensions, as well as children who I could identify with more in terms of their wants and desires, and then set them apart against each other. And yeah, and so the way I divided it up was that I would have sort of the mother and one of the children be the main struggles in the first book, and then the brother and sister that are older in the second book, and then the younger brother and sister in the third book. So I was sort of aging through as we go through time, but not giving too many main characters to focus on. So that's, I guess, what made it like necessary to narrow down. I'm not going to write an 800-page epic like that is not me. You know, you'll get like 250, 320, that kind of like solid, but you know, doable kind of length for me. So
if you package it like a tome, I'm sure Nicole will read it. What's her channel? I forgot. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I mean, it isn't a box set. So I suppose if I made the box set into one book and got,
Yeah.
if drafted
As
it just
long as it looks like a phone book, she's on it.
right. All right. I will see about a special edition to see if I can get featured on. Yeah, that'd be funny.
Oh man. Quadrant. That's amazing. Congratulations on all the publications, Margaret. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Stargazer says 2026 Scottish.
Mm, well, so there's another question about what's next, and here's what's next in the trilogy. So
Mhm.
Orla Rafferty is the young woman who grew up to be a widow, and it takes place mainly where she is now living in Glasgow. But for the second book, and what I see as a trilogy in my head, but we'll see what ends up happening. The main character, who is a relative, is growing up and based in Manchester. So set in England, but they will also be meeting. So there will be multiple locations, but probably more centered in Manchester. And the third
Mm.
book is another relative, and she is actually mainly in Dublin. So we have three countries within a country there that I misspoke. Three countries within a small area. Let's say that.
Yeah. 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 Thank you. Nicole's bookish nook. For some reason, it just like escaped my mind. Yeah, I'm excited too. I love the way Margaret writes. All right. Thank you for tearing my heart out sometimes.
Yeah,
All right.
your boxer message today. There's only so many characters. You're gonna find each other. Yeah.
I'm trying to. Okay, Stormrack and Spindrift, the third installment in the Remnants Trilogy, takes place in 1833, and Orla Rafferty Seeks Her Fortune also takes place that same year. What about that time period do you gravitate towards? Sheena now at that time period is grown and just married, where Orla is a year into her mourning period as a widower.
Yes. Okay, so good homework on the characters, because I had to write out their timelines multiple times trying to figure out who was born when, because if you don't get it right and you put it in print, then you're screwed, right? So I had to do this like reworking multiple times to figure out which generations, what birth dates, like what marriage dates, and all this kind of stuff, so that I didn't mess it up in the first book. And the last book of Remnants, where Sheena is a certain age, she's experiencing things at her early marriage and moving into Scotland, back to Scotland. And so that, having already determined when she was born, that needed to be that year. So I actually did not do any of the like revolutionary stuff I'm getting into now then, because it was more about the individual story, and they were mostly in the countryside. So it didn't have to do with the capital and the urban organizing folks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But for this book, I did choose the 1830s as a sort of cauldron that I wanted to boil over, because I was reading about the Chartists and how some of them got started, and the unstamped press movement, and a lot of the sort of classism and the pressure on different 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 groups in Britain to become more democratic. Right. So that was really fascinating to me. And I wanted to put my characters in the middle there so that they could get buffeted by those winds, because I live to torture them.
Don't you? Don't you? And me too. It's a problem, Margaret.
Not really. There's no torture in the book. It's just a lot of like emotional realization and sort of awakening to the evil that is present in the world. You may come up with a sort of hard upbringing and like a poor family, but like if you haven't seen the rest of the world and you haven't read the news, you don't know sort of the bigger picture. So this is what's happening for Orla at this period, when she's no longer protected by a man and she's able to be independent and make her own decisions.
Yeah, that's what I really loved about actually historical fiction, your trilogy, um, Orla that I'm in the progress of reading. As much as I tease and give you a hard time, that's genuinely like what I'm interested in. And especially not just a time period, but a particular uh, culture and a part of the world I'm not familiar with.
Mhm.
It just feels helpful to have the story broken down by a family saga because it also puts so much into context.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really
That's
helpful.
that's that's a good reason for writing historical fiction, is that you're processing things that you're reading, right? So like most of these books are the research books, so a lot of them are kind of dry about political theory or history of classism in England and whatnot. And I will eat that shit up because when I'm like, oh my gosh, like that is so terrible. And look what they did. And oh, they had a chance, but oh no, they got transported to Australia. Try again. Like to me, that's exciting. But I realize that to make any meaning of it for most people, like you'd have to make it a personal decision. You'd have to make it a personal tragedy. And so that's sort of what I'm communicating. But also on your point of like the time period and historical fiction in general, like I was watching Brie at Locked Booktition. She just had a live stream yesterday about the Reformatory. Did you read that
Mhm.
story? Because I
Yeah,
think I
everybody read it.
I think we better. I don't know if I'm imagining.
That was a
She
hazy time, by the way.
that was
We're both
what?
busy. That was a hazy time. We were both busy reading a lot.
Yes. So I was reminded of a lot of the things that were happening in that book. She was talking with Ashley of Bookish Realm, and they were saying that Tananarive Due has this way of writing that is both real of things happening in the past, but also accessible to more populations than the ones that have lived it. So it's like this magical way of speaking out of both sides of your mouth in a good way. And I was like, that is so true. That's what I'm striving for, is that I'm representing things that could have happened to anybody. They're realistic, but for people who don't know much about the context, they can see how this would be a hard decision, or they can see how this would be unfair and unjust, and then why people would then go to protest something like having to pay a penny tax on a newspaper. Why is that such a big deal? Let me tell you. Yeah. Yeah.
I do see a question. I'm going to hold off on that just for a moment, but I'll bring it back.
Okay.
And speaking of, this is not all horror. I wanted to talk about, like, there's like two things going on. One in the Remnants Trilogy, and one in your contribution to the Stygian Collection. So in Space Ghost Heartbeat
Mhm.
is told from the perspective of a male character, Dirk. He
Mhm.
has a. This is what you wrote, okay?
I had to go for that name. I mean, when else am I going to get to use that name?
I'm already giggling. All right. He has a great rough and tumble and squeezes the rib cage of his lover and ran his fingers down the column of her throat, as where in the Remnants Trilogy, Edward leans forward and kisses the name I'm going to say wrong,
Myrna.
Myrna, deeply, makes her laugh, cradles her head, and strokes her thighs. Could you talk about both approaches to explicit scenes and why you chose to write them the way you did?
Ooh, okay. So this isn't addressed by anyone in any former interview. So this is an exclusive to Leslie's channel right here. No one has picked up on that. Um so yeah, we were talking about genre and category a little bit, and one of the things that I started out with, the historical mystery first. There's some implied scenes like this, but nothing on the page. Dulce's legacy, it's high school, so the most is a kiss. And then in Remnants, what I really built up was like, it's a family, so there's nothing going on, right? But then when you see the relationships develop outside the family, you get comfortable with them and you're kind of growing up with them. And so I figure, okay, so this is a young married couple. Part of their connection is going to be very important to communicate in physical language. And so I felt that it was really important to be real to a young woman's experience of the time, perhaps, and communicate that just as part of her daily life. And I wanted to make it a loving marriage, of course. So there's like loving touch and, what would you call it?
Silliness.
silliness, like practical everyday informality. And for the sci-fi short story, there's a twist in there. And so like you have to really immerse the reader in one person's POV. So in order to space that apart from where the story is going, it has to be very clear, like how you see from his eyes. And so I make that very separate from like the reality. I that doesn't really answer the question, but I don't want to give a spoiler.
Well,
um
I don't know. Could I just say I appreciated that? I feel like I could see a different. I'm glad you're saying everything because I felt like when I was reading the short story, I felt like, Margaret, I don't know what research you did, but you captured the male gaze very
TikTok.
well.
Yeah, yeah.
It just feels
Um,
it feels palpable.
yeah. So yeah, I guess the satisfaction that you get from a short story for me is that like you think it's going to be the status quo just in space, and then you get oh, and then you get to cheer for like someone who's getting their just desserts, shall we say.
Dessert indeed.
Yeah.
And in speaking of dessert, that is so funny. This worked out perfectly. I did not plan this. Um, all right, moving along.
Food.
Yes.
Okay, yay.
Um, in the Keening, the family makes oat bannocks and stovey. In the grasping root, acorn mash. In Stormrack and Spindrift, there's a family feast of triangle potatoes, scones, and boiled rams and onions with a couple of fried eggs alongside. And Orla Rafferty seeks her fortune. Orla's brother Christopher thinks fish pie and mushroom soup with a ale cures what ails ya. And Orla loves the sherry.
Okay. How is it?
Could you? Oh yeah, I'll answer that one second. I'll say, could you talk about the importance of food in storytelling?
Oh my
And did
God.
you make any of these dishes before including it in your story?
Yes. Yes. Okay. So, I love food. I definitely appreciate knowing where it comes from, how people make it, how that relates to their traditions and their family ways, right? And I have so many historical Scottish cookbooks over there, you don't even know. They're crowding out all my herbals. Like, yeah, I just love learning about the way things used to be done. The problem came when it would describe how things used to be done and I wouldn't understand it, right? Or like I would have references to planting and I'd have to watch YouTube videos about planting and being like, how what are they what is that? Like I can't tell. I'm so far divorced from like living on the land, making a living on the land, right? So I had to do a lot of research to make people who were farmers and like living off the land sound or at least feel realistic. But here's a fun fact. Before I moved here to the West Coast and I was still living in DC, I thought it would be cool to do like a historical food and folklore supper club. So I did like two trials. I did Scotland and I did um Italy because I was visiting Italy, and so I took like a cooking course there and came back and was like, "Ooh, I can do peasant food from this region, from Puglia." So what I did was I researched a few dishes that would have gone together, that would have like been good for leftovers, that would have been in like a cycle of frugality, and would like talk a little bit about what time period these came from, what materials were available then, what like a person in that era would do for a day, and put that on the menu and have people talk about it. And it was so nerdy. My friends came for like the trials, and then when it came to like, okay, so am I going to do this? I don't want to get licenses in a rented apartment for food service. I don't think I'm prepared for that. So I didn't like go out and get, like legal things and spend money for space and all that. But I really had the interest in like food and folklore and all that kind of stuff. So I put it into the books. I recycled that. I was frugal with that research and I put it into the books. So Let's see. We've got Bannocks. I mean, Bannocks are a thing, different thing in different cultures. They use the same word. It's actually, you've probably come across it in indigenous literature, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So Bannock in different indigenous situations will be different, but the word is taken from like the Scotch Irish settlers that came through and sort of melded different foodways. Um, so Bannock, we've got fish pie, stovies. Stovies are like dough with drippings. You've got potato pancakes, which are called something else, but I didn't want to lose people. I was already going far enough with Myrna, like as a name. So like I
Yeah.
wanted to translate things so that people weren't like totally um alienated by the language used. But I wanted to give them a sense of here's what you eat every day. It's often the same. It's still can be tasty, but like this isn't where you're getting entertainment in your life. Life was very different then.
Yeah. And then
I love hearing that. Thank you, Mary.
yeah, yeah, Mary's like the food authenticates the time period. I love the food portions in your book. Yeah, so did I, and I felt like I'm still reading Orla, but in your trilogy, I just felt like it throughout, and I felt like you were telling a story between where they were in terms of class and like finances. So, I think in book 2, early on, they're having that acorn mash, but then later on they're having more of a buffet because they could afford it.
Right, right. You had
Yeah.
2 things, and then you
Yeah.
add another, and it's like, "Woo!" Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I
exactly.
just thought I love that, like, it's a great way, um, how do I s how do I say this? I just appreciate that this is like what I'm looking for in writing, as I'm looking for those breadcrumbs of what's going out instead of like just blatantly telling me. And that's something that you do really well, whether it's the indication of food or other things that are going on to engage to like kind of like make it clear what the characters maybe feeling emotionally without like outright telling me.
Mm,
And I just felt like you do that really well. So
thank you.
um
I was just looking at an old, magazine, Writer's Digest magazine, and it was K.M. Weiland going through the first 2 chapters of Jane Eyre saying, "Here's what all the things that she does right," and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I was like, "Oh, this is fascinating." She establishes character, she does the setting, she reflects the symbolism, and I was like, "Oh, that's really cool. I wonder if I do that." And you're saying the setting thing or like the reflecting
yeah,
thing is coming
yeah.
through, which is great, which is really gratifying to hear.
Yeah, because not I really mean like not all authors know to like make those connections, and sometimes I'll read something and it feels disjointed, and it's because every single those elements really have to hit to make me as a reader like connect, or at least at the very least understand where
Mm,
they're coming from and where the trajectory of them is going, and like food is definitely like an important element. At least
yeah,
I think so.
yeah.
Um,
And it stands in for class. You're totally right about that. So food
yeah,
does as well as dress. So when you talk about first thing I talk about in the book is what she's wearing, her new dress, and like it's not just because it's a girly thing. So
yeah, or just like here, like right off the bat, acorn mash. I'm like, these are tough times if you're having acorn mash. You can mash it all you want. It's still acorns.
you have to soak it a lot and bring out those
Yeah,
tannins. Actually learned about that in terms of South Korean doing that in their diet, not Native Americans. But yeah, I
yeah.
think there's a parallel. Yeah.
Um, so in Fabled Passages, your short story collection, the Remnants Trilogy, and Orla Rafferty seeks her fortune, marriage and politics are very much intertwined. Could you speak about that?
Marriage and politics. Oh, gosh. Okay, that could go many different ways. I'm trying to think about how in Fabled Passages. Hmm. I'm blanking on which one you might be drawing from there, but I'll speak to the other
Yeah,
two.
these are the ones, and I'll look at my notes again. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess where I would start with marriage and politics would be that um marriage is a political status in these times that I'm writing about. So 19th century Britain, being a woman means that you are property as a married person. And if you were like playing a game of life and you had different players, you could be single woman, married woman, widow, then the widow would be the most powerful because you are deemed mature. You are deemed to have your wits about you and be able to make decisions, and you can retain property, you can retain money, and all of those things can help you exercise political rights. Not that you necessarily need to do so, but you can. And so for Orla, as soon as she's coming out of mourning, she's sort of adjusting to life as a widow. She's got decisions to make. She's got adjustments. She's got things to advocate for herself for, which she hasn't necessarily done before. And so that starts her on the path of waking up to the conditions of the world. And for the McLean family, I'm thinking marriage and politics. So we've got another widow, but she's more explored in her capacity as a mother, I think. But the younger couples who are going through things are experiencing their marriages as sort of negotiations, I think, because they're in different places learning about different things in the world. So when you have a different amount of power, you see things differently. And so I would say working together was a challenge. And so that's what I tried to represent, is that when you have to make tough decisions as a married couple, not speaking from experience, but hey, this is what a fiction author does. That, you'd have to learn and take chances and figure it out together. So that I think is very brave of them. So that's where I'm very proud of my characters.
Yeah, and just to like quickly add, I'm sure I meant something else and I still remember, but also, what is it called? In the photograph, in Fabled Passages in your short story collection, that is a same-sex couple, and the wife is mourning the loss of their wife. And so I thought, gosh, there's so many times when when it comes to like human rights, like just uh their marriage is inherently political.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was really beautiful that you wrote a story, um and they're just like they just exist and we're reflecting on the beautiful life that they had through the characters mourning. I think I'm going off on a tangent, but I thought that was really beautiful.
No, it's okay. I'm trying to remember. I remember mostly that there were kids and like the
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's not like you're not writing necessarily politics in it, but unfortunately, because of our state of the world, it is political. You know what I mean? Does it make any sense?
Yeah.
And
I think in writing that, I had a pronoun that I thought, are we assuming this is for a wife or a husband? And then I was like, oh, well, why don't we put the other one in there and see how that works and see if we're ambiguous? And then I went through it and I was like, oh, I really like this. So, sometimes you go in with the intent and then to be political, and sometimes you're just equal opportunity. You're giving space for something else to exist, even though it's not your reality. Like, I
yeah,
think we should do. Yeah.
yeah, it was beautiful. I loved it.
Yeah.
Now I gotta go back. I have all these tabs.
Tabs on the computer or tabs on the book? I only have one.
Both. One is on my. I have OneNotes for all my questions. In the Remnants Trilogy, Myrna and Sheena separately and at different times have like visceral reactions to fire or smoke. Can you talk about portraying lingering effects of traumatic events and how like the body keeps account?
Oh, yeah, the body keeps the score.
Yeah.
You said Myrna and Sheena, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know how common it was, but I believe it was a fairly common tactic as part of the clearances for landowners who were not sympathetic to their crofters' plight and they wanted to move them out and they wouldn't move out. They would burn people out of their homes and burn the roof, right? And the roof was the main part that you scrounged to get wood to put in place. And so that really meant you had to move on. And this is part of what happens in the keening. And so as a child, all of the children get that experience of being burned out of their home, and some of them take it with them later. And so in terms of, I don't remember who was just in chat in the last couple of days saying, my head is hurting because I'm trying to do all of the edits at once and I need to hold everything in my brain at the same time so that I can make sure to keep it straight. And this is the sort of thing, like, you can write it down, but like the threads that you want to pull through and, make meaningful throughout the series, it's very hard to do unless you keep going back and you write extensive notes on your character, or write that from this point to this point I want it to repeat, or just dive back in and read your story again, honestly. So that's one of the things that I used for those family characters from that experience on Mull to take it with them later in life. And trying to remember the exact circumstance for their reactions. I think it was easier. Sheena was still in Nova Scotia before she left. Yeah. And it was easily put down, right? So she was younger, and I think it was less affecting her. Yeah, I also gave people like a creepy little vibe as they went through Glencoe, because that's a valley that has like its own haunted history and spirit. And so I really wanted to stick that in there. I made them take a detour a little bit so that they would have to go through it.
Just for that. You just had to do that to them.
Yeah. The waves were going the wrong way. I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, so I am not the kind to have a super organized notes that I will find 2 years later, like some authors. What I do is I do have the old documents. I do have the old notebooks, like in paper. And when I immerse myself to get ready for like the next stage in the story, like I will have to do with this one in like a couple years, I imagine. I'll read back through it and I'll read back through my written notes. And sometimes that will be like, oh yes, I wanted to have something connected to that. But sometimes I'm sure I started off with an idea and poof, it's gone.
Margaret, what do I do with you?
Totally honest session here.
Yeah, me too. I'm in the story right away. It's comfortable and well. A new story, the book feels familiar. Yeah. Yeah. Cat Paw, I didn't forget about you. I'm working my way to you, just so you know.
What's that?
I'm working away. I see there's one question I haven't grabbed yet, but I'm gonna circle back to it.
Okay.
But if anyone has any more questions, feel free to ask, and I'll just queue them up as I go along.
I'm not sure what Cat Paw means by that question, though. So if you want to clarify.
She was talking about Orla Rafferty seeks her fortune.
But which lives collide? From different books or from the same series? Like this series, will they talk to each other? Or both series, are they going to talk to each other? That's what I didn't know if she meant. Okay.
Go ahead and clarify. But I'm waiting till we get to Orla.
Okay.
I'm working my way there. Okay. I do have I have one selfish spoiler type question. It's not about Orla. It's about I've been trying to not like spoil any of them.
You're doing a good job.
Huh?
You're doing a good job. I don't think we've spoiled anything yet. It's all like historical details.
I'm going to right now.
Okay.
I will put the spoiler chat up. If anyone, in replay or now hasn't read the Remnants Trilogy, and then as soon as I'm done, I'll take it off This is purely selfish reasons because I have Margaret here right now with us.
Is this like a backstory thing that you didn't read that you want to know?
No.
Okay.
Okay. We could do that too. If you're anything you want to spill the beans on, we can do that. All right. Spoiler chat now. Okay.
Commence.
Alistair, the youngest sibling, dreams of university and a chance to reform the political system in the colony that denied his father justice, right? And his father's death. Why would he do this to me? It was so tragic what happens to Alistair. He ends up being like, he kind of like gets in this kerfuffle, like if he's not responsible for it, but he ends up having to be shipped off to Sydney, Australia, and has his life over there. And I guess, I don't know how that works. Can't leave because he has to fulfill the sentence.
It's a penal colony.
Why? Why would he do that? Why?
Because it's representative. Because it's part of the immigrant experience. Because if you're a poor person in that time period, that was part of your like fate, like a certain percentage of folks, because they didn't have room in the jails, because the people wanted to get the riffraff out of the country and leave it nice and quiet for the rest of them. They sent them to Australia to settle and make trouble for other Indigenous folks. That country. Yeah, exactly. So made them someone else's problem. And meanwhile, the people who are like just trying to survive, committing crimes to do so, are now creating problems for someone else. The British Empire does this. And
Empire.
Richard's not here, so I can go off. But yeah, I feel like we've had evil throughout history, right? But the propensity for humans to accrue power and do so much evil has just, in the last 500 years, has skyrocketed. And like the British Empire is at the top of that. So we've peaked and they've dropped off, and America's like the ragtag, like the second string. And like, I think we'll just keep falling and falling until we collapse.
Yeah. I mean, we have little kid syndrome over here. We have little kid syndrome over here.
Yeah.
That I just felt, I was like, innocent. Let me jump in this book.
Yeah.
And then additionally, the very last page, there's a paragraph. Okay. How dare you, Margaret? Alistair's niece, Miari, decides to strike out for the Oregon Territory. Why? I just think
yes, that's right.
Devil woman.
Yeah. Because I'm leaving myself options for series. Come on. I thought I would actually write a book set in Australia, but I have no desire to go all the way around the world to Australia and spend a lot of time there. And I don't want to represent a place if I haven't even been there. So that's why I was like, okay, we're speeding that up. But I did put the Oregon Territory in because then she would get to like come to where I am. And if I eventually build up the courage to write about where I live now, that would be pretty cool. Yeah.
Oh, it's going to be devastating. It's going to be devastating. Just in one paragraph, you got me. I was so upset.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
All right. I'll take off the ticker now.
Keep people on their toes. That's right. I totally forgot about that. I remember the epilogue and like the success, but I didn't remember the Oregon connection.
Of course, you're so good about that.
Come back around.
Okay, we'll come back to that. I'll pull this. People with very mild crimes got sent to Australia too, if they were young and healthy, because the colonies needed workers and slavery was outlawed. Yeah.
So I read half of The Fatal Shore, which is like this tome about the founding of British Australia, and they talk about the end of the 18th century, the discovery, the penal colony, the solution, and sending all these convicts here. And it sort of trickles in for 40 years, doesn't do very well, and then it sort of builds up, and people like go out into the bush and start farming. And I think, and I'm not sure about this because there's two different periods of research in my head, but the date where they reformed the crimes so that so many crimes weren't capital crimes and sent for transportation, and the date where the prisoners for transportation went up might be around the same time. So like 1830s, like coincidence? I don't know. Good point.
Before I jump into the next set of questions, would you mind just providing a little synopsis of Orla Rafferty Seeks Her Fortune?
Yes. Ready for my pitch. Okay, so Orla Rafferty. I will answer Cat Paw's question at the same time again, too. So Orla is a widow who's just coming out of mourning in 1833 Glasgow, which means she's going to go about her life. She's got a comfortable sort of bequest, and she's got friends, and she's going to be a happy little cog in society, right? Well, something goes wrong, and she has to talk to a solicitor, and then she has to figure out how her money works, and then she has to figure out how to fix it and where to invest her money. And then, she starts to learn what's going on in the world. Like I said, she joins the lending library. She renegotiates her friendships. She gets opinions from people about things that she doesn't know, and she's on her way. So she has an interesting journey. And what will I say? The structure for the trilogy that I envision is that Orla is the daughter of an Irish immigrant, and the Raffertys are those three Irish brothers who left Ireland after the 1798 failed rebellion in Wexford. So that's Cat Paw's question. It's two generations. So her father is someone who's an Irish immigrant, and she has retained some of the prejudices and other chips on the shoulder from that. And her cousins, who will be the stars in the other books, will also have varying experiences about that in different places, which I thought would be pretty cool. So yeah, hopefully that answers it.
Yeah, didn't you say it was three sisters separated when they come to England, and now when they are adults, will they reconnect? Just curious. It's the genealogist and me who wants to know.
Yeah. So it's three brothers and their children. So it's cousins that are actually like linking up and finding each other. No
Okay.
worries.
Okay. That's helpful. Okay. So Orla passes a gentleman with a lingering scent of caramel smoky sweetness
Oh yeah.
to him that throws her a bit off her like axis. What sense of a man enthrall you, Margaret?
What a good question.
And everyone in the chat answered that question too.
Yeah. No, like I was thinking about this. I had a soap that I'd gotten months ago, and it's sandalwood, and I finally used it because I didn't have any other soaps, and I was like, whoa, this is way too strong. It's like straight sandalwood. So like not my cup of tea. Is it masculine? I don't know. I don't think it's masculine. I just think it's
like warm.
Smoky. Yeah. So I mean, caramel's good. I like a caramel scent. There's also like seawater, kind of like a salty, briny, like beach kind of thing. That can be nice too. I don't know. What's tricky is that originally I had that scene as like she thought he was gorgeous, and then I realized I can't do that. So I went back and had to make him like noticeable in some other way, and I was like, oh, he works in the sugar warehouses. Yeah, he definitely is going to smell like caramel.
Sweet and smoky.
Yeah. So funny.
I, on the other hand, I like what is this?
Leather, like saddle soap leather kind of thing. There's lots of different angles.
There's smoky tobacco, cedarwood, fir needle.
Cedar is good. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. There's some scents like bother me, but this one, I don't know why I like the smoky tobacco.
Yeah, tobacco.
I also note, going along the lines of caramel, Edward in the grasping group has two butterscotch wedges in his mouth. What is it about hard candy with you and men?
I don't remember that at all. I'm pretty sure I was like, what candies do I know still existed in 1830? I have no idea. So that was probably like why I went with hard candy. It would be hard otherwise because candies are like so manufactured. Yeah, that's funny. No, I'm just trying to make people feel real and like, human level rather than wooden.
Yeah. I just thought that tickled me. I figured it was like a historical thing because you're trying to grab at like a certain candies, and they're only gonna have hard candy. But that just tickled me. I was just like, there's something going on here.
They
What
would
movie?
have other stuff, I'm sure, but like on the frontier, probably lower.
Yeah.
Yeah, fewer choices. Hey DL, happy birthday.
Oh yeah, let me come back. I'm saving it for when I have a whole day weekend to read it. Yeah. I love sandalwood incense. Yeah. That gets me too.
Yeah. Just overpowered my whole bathroom and I was like, oh, I can't.
Deal. If you didn't hear the question, I feel like this is like right up your alley. So I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Margaret.
Scent on a man enthralls you. Is
Yeah.
that the word you use?
Yeah, you got it.
Enthralls.
Enthrall. Throw you off your access. Okay. Very important.
Yeah.
And while you're answering, I'm going to go ahead and ask the next question. What moved you to write this story, and why did it need to be told as a historical fiction narrative?
Orla?
Yeah.
How would it be told today? Ooh, I can't tell it today because I'm in the process. So I'm sort of creating like the prototype for myself in the past, if that makes sense, right? So as I've said, I think this is the truth. I did work on a book that was set in Chicago in the progressive era, the Gilded Age, the progressive era. So like the 1890s. And I wanted it to portray the richest rich people and the poorest poor people and the gap and the inequality and have some sort of not Horatio Alger story, but something close, like something where someone is going in and taking what they need to succeed and not having to pay a toll to all the gatekeepers, but finding her own way. And so I wanted the story, but then I had it in Chicago and then it moved to New York and it didn't work in New York because of the demographics. Then I was like, well, I don't know how to end this. So it's in the drawer. So I dropped it. And I still had this feeling of wanting a time period like that. And so when I thought about it, I was like, well, there's the first round of reform politics, which was from the aristocratic era. That was in the 1830s. That's when you have the first act of like religious tolerance, which is the Catholic Emancipation in 1829. You've got abolition starting. So not just ending the trade of slavery, but abolishing slavery for enslaved peoples in the empire, which is 1833. You've got the Reform Act, which is 1832, and that is what changed the composition of the parliament. So it wasn't all the rich folks anymore. You actually had some like middle class folks. It's a tiny step, but that will start rolling you down the hill. And anyway, so there are all these things in close proximity. And so I was like, ooh, I could really fuck some shit up in that decade. So this is why I was like, oh, okay. So that I was like reading books on Chartism and basically like big historical overviews that were talking about how key Chartism was and how they didn't get their aims. They weren't successful in like the 1839 to 43 kind of period, but all of their requests, they had 6 demands that they wanted the royals to sign a charter for, the parliament to sign a charter. They didn't get them. They sort of faded into oblivion, but over the next 50, 60 years, all of those things were accomplished by various other interest groups. And it was like, see, they manifested and it happened. And so this is the energy I want for us.
Yeah.
This is what we need now.
Yeah. I mean, it's gonna have to be a behind the scenes. There's a lot of what I'm reading that you're writing, and I'm like, Margaret, you're in here right now.
want to hear about that. I want to hear about that. If you write like stuff in the margin, I definitely want you to like send me a shot. Like that. Those would be
You know what? Before I continue, I'm gonna go. I asked DL. I said to her, "What sort of a man enthralls you?" Sandalwood and citrus mix. That's a good one.
Yeah, see that might like lighten it and give a little like spice instead. Yeah.
That's it. You got it, DL. All right. James, actually correct me if I say his name wrong. James Frontier O'Brien is a real historical figure. Why did you choose to highlight him specifically?
Bum, ba-da-bum. Bum, bum, ba-da-bum. There we go. Bronter. James Bronter O'Brien. So he was one of the, I mean, I'll say minor chartists. He was a major figure in the movement, but no one's ever heard of him. And so when I come across someone like that, I go, would anyone mind if I like all right? So when I was thinking about someone who like has a part to play, and it was a very important part to play for British society going on forever, right? He helped move people on the newspapers. He helped the Chartists move forward. He was a speaker, he was a writer, he was an organizer. And he's well known for the things he did a couple years after this time period. And so I thought, well, what's he doing now? He's running around writing articles, trying to drum up business, trying to organize people. He can do that with my character. So that's why I thought, okay, if I want my character to experience like the awakening, to experience the society sort of shaking off its feathers and being like, we need to do something. Like, I want to put him in here. And so I read about so I read a biography and I thought, well, there's very little about his personal life. He's married a few years later and has children. There's no names to any of them. There's no like indication where they came from. He's from Ireland. They know the town. They know something about his father, but it's very sketchy. So I thought one of the things that I like to do when I read historical fiction is see if any of them are real and look them up, right? And so in the author's note, I definitely tell people which is real and which are not. But if they are real and someone's inspired to go see more of what they do or read something that they wrote, I think that's a sign of success, that I got people interested in a bit of history and they can say that it's true. You know, it's accurate. It's not misinformation, for example. So I try to be clear about that. But yeah, and then you have a name of someone in history who you know did something rather than just fictional characters. So I feel like that makes it more real to people, for some people, you know.
Yeah, no, definitely. I immediately looked up his name and I was like, oh, this is a real person.
No photos. No photos of the time, but like some very bad sort of charcoal drawings. Yeah. There's two that look completely different. And I'm looking back and forth between like a pencil drawing and a charcoal or whatever it is. And I'm like, how is this the same person? It's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Was this the first time you used a real figure in a historical fiction work? I mean, with like actually their name.
Actually, well, an actual character in the story, yes. I did reference real characters and others, but they weren't like on the page talking. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I was kind of wondering about that.
Sandalwood and menthol. Ooh, I don't know about that.
I think that's almost like on the verge of that tobacco. I get that.
Oh, really?
I will say I'll give you a little quick story. I have a couple of things, and we'll be drawing this to a close. This is like TMI, but my dad, he grew up in East Los Angeles, and so funny because I was so asthmatic, so he should have been doing this. But he smoked. I think he smoked like Camels or whatever. And my grandpa, my I guess my mom's side smoked. So there's something I don't smoke. I can't be near this stuff, but there's something about it that transports me to these fond childhood memories, which is like so like juxtaposed against like how terrible cigarettes are.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you that there's something that it's like a fond memory scent. And even when I was little, my dad would take us to the liquor store, and he would get, I don't know if you remember this, but I think I brought this up before, but he would get his cigarettes, like we would get a drink, like I would get the Clearly Canadian, and they were this gum, and they were fake cigarettes. So it was gum
Yeah.
rolled with the sugar powder.
Yeah.
And so I would have mine and he would have his.
Yeah, those were the days.
That's so bad.
Yeah. I don't know. Was bubble tape, was that meant to mimic like a what are those cans guys have in their back pockets? It's like spitting tobacco.
The tobacco, the chewing tobacco.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what bubble tape was like originally meant to mimic. Like, I don't know.
Gotta get it started young, I guess.
Gross. I can't. The only thing I can do is like a pipe or a like some other kinds of tobacco. Cigarillos. There's some weird things that like don't smell like cigarette smoke to me, and I was like, oh, that's quite nice. But
yeah, it's so funny. Those were the days, huh?
Just have my pen over here. I'll stick with my pen.
Oh man. Let me see. Do you have like a favorite, I guess for me, in the grasping root and words that I want to bring back, if I could just figure out how to figure in my daily life, is infuriating fusspot.
Fusspot, yeah.
It's like infuriating fusspot. That got me. I love that.
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite historical word or phrase you've come across? And was there anything that you particularly want to bring back to like now? It was just like such a great word or phrase.
Oh, hold on a second.
Yeah. There she is, being an infuriating fusspot all over again. Till the next book. I have never had a cigarette or anything, so I have no idea the smoke candy was okay. But back then it was so bad. Yeah, I'm just laughing because it's so funny because we clearly know now it's like not good, but it's just such a fond memory. And the fact that it's bad can't take that away, but it's like, it sounds bad. It's so funny. I love that. We got to hold on to those moments.
Yes. I'm checking my records here. Here's the page that I went to look at all my word choices and make sure from the OED that they were correct. And so I actually had, and here's the one that came to mind because there's a bunch of examples I can't choose between right now. But if you've ever heard the term numpty, don't be a numpty. It just means it's stupid, like an idiot. But I looked it up and it says the first recording of using that is 1985. And I was like, how can it be that recent? So I couldn't use it. But when I looked up, that is a Scots word from 1813, which sounds very similar and would probably be okay for British audiences to figure it out, is tumphy. Don't be a tumphy.
Yeah, that's so funny.
So I thought that was fun. Tumphy. Tumphy.
Tumphy. That's funny.
That's what got me though. People's names. These are all the names that I had to keep track of. Some real, some not real, but yeah, it got confusing. I needed a chart.
Yeah, that's some real like spy work you got going on there.
Threads, needed my pins. Yeah, exactly.
If anyone has any other questions, we're like wrapping this up. And in the meantime, I'll ask these last two questions of Margaret.
Cat Paw calls her cats fusspots.
Fusspots. That's like so great. That's how I'm gonna use it from now on. What are 5 ways the community could better support you?
Ooh. That's a hard one. Let's see. What would I wish people would do? I'm trying to consolidate the content that I put out, right? So I'm to be found in several places. So where I want to engage with people is the YouTube channel. So if you're not following, like, find me on the YouTube channel for sure. If you're here and you love Leslie, you should come over to my house too. I am writing here and there, not all the time, but at least once a month on the Patreon blog. So I tell people if they want to see like blog posts and photographs and exclusive like ahead of time things, that's on the Patreon blog. So that's the second place. There's a free tier, so you can read like half of the blog posts for free and you'll know when things are happening without paying anything. It's just like a subscribing to my newsletter, which I'm trying to cut out. So those two. What else? I mean, if you're here in Portland, you can come be friends with me. So like in person, I'm trying to like be more in person in real life things. I'm going to an event called Holiday Cheer on Sunday, which is so fun. It is the Oregon Historical Society's annual author fair where they have a Santa and they have hot chocolate and they have Dickens dressed carolers and a lot of people show up to buy books. It's amazing. It's like Yola Book Afloat.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. My project for 2025 is going to try to involve more people. So, if you want to support, one of the new things I'm doing in 2025 is inviting people onto the channel for community discussions about truth and reconciliation. So, climate despair sort of galvanized me in a way that I want to do something about. And that means I want to hold some space and invite people on for however they are experiencing climate despair or, you know, just like overwhelm in terms of how we can save our world. So the two topics that I got for January were human trafficking and disability and climate change. So if you're interested in either of those, I think January, definitely look it up. Or if you have another angle that you're very interested in or care about and want to come on and talk to us about, then submit it and we'll do it on a different month. Like that would be really cool. Is 4 okay? Those are the 4 I came up with.
Yeah, I love it. Also, I'll say it now, but I'll say it again later. But I do have all the links, you know, to grab Margaret's book in the details of this. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, more than any other author. Yeah, Margaret hustles. She does a lot.
Dictionary. Oh my gosh, I'm glad it works.
Yeah, that's so funny.
Some of them are like folk sayings or like dialect words, and so I don't know if Kindle would necessarily find them, but Google definitely would. So
yeah. Who are 5 authors you'd like to spotlight?
Just any authors. Oh, okay. What have I read recently that I loved? Okay. So I just finished Andrew Boyd's I Want a Better Catastrophe, which was part of what helped me come up with this truth and reconciliation idea. It's about climate emergency and climate grief, and it's really helpful. So that's one I recommend. I don't know him very well. He's a Gen Xer. He's an activist, and he's like transitioning into how do we keep doing this in this given landscape, which I thought was really important. One of my favorite authors who always puts out lots of books, Rebecca Solnit. I started on her when I read History of Walking or Wanderlust, one of the two. And she's a nonfiction writer who, again, is Gen X and especially concerned with the Bay Area. And her prose is beautiful and really deep, and she's really good at making connections across disciplines, and I love that. So Rebecca Solnit always. What else recent? What did I say I just loved? I should be like thinking of my recent wrap-ups, but I don't know. Other, I could go to author tubers, like people on AuthorTube. People have put out new books. I think there might be one in the chat who just came out with a book yesterday. Colistro? I may get the title wrong, but DL Tillery is a fellow author tuber who I definitely can lift up. Say, check it out. She had a long live stream party yesterday talking about her new book, which is awesome. 2 more books, authors. My mind is going blank right now. Come back to me. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you for saying that. That's okay. Thank you for bringing up all those suggestions. You don't necessarily have to have 5, but I was just trying to gauge for something. But I think we're all caught up in the chat. Thank you, Margaret, for answering all my questions, for putting up with me, because I definitely felt like I had to come at you for what you did to some of my characters that I loved. Oh, is there anything else? Any parting words? Anything in particular?
I did think of one more author. So R.F. Kuang, who wrote Babel, who is amazing and who set her book in the 1820s at the beginning of the British Empire. So like we're thinking like this, but she went fantasy and I went historical. So, otherwise just the same, totally the same. What else about Orla? I mean, I don't have anyone else who has done this much work to like draw together words and get great questions and like draw themes and all that stuff. So
thank you. I'm just here with my pots and pans.
it was amazing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's one of those like,
oh, thank you. I felt like I was worried I was going to do a good enough job. I was like, so I'm glad that as long as you're happy.
I'm so happy. Feels really good. Cagliostro. Okay, I was a syllable off. Tale of the Liverton Dark Fantasy. There we go.
All right, everyone, pick up a copy. Thank you, everyone that showed up in the chat and asked questions and participated. I love you to pieces, and happy reading, everyone.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.